I'm Melanie Kyle, I'm Extension Master Gardener, and I get to introduce Randy. I'm always going to talk about all things tomato, and you will learn something you always do. So please welcome Randy Simon.
Thank you. Welcome to the 2015 Berkeley Jefferson Extension Master Gardeners TomatoFest. As Melanie said, I'm Randy Simon, and today I'm going to talk to you about the cultivation of tomatoes, and that covers the whole gamut, from seed starting to growing, transplanting, secure and maintenance, and seed saving. Then I'll review the most commonly asked questions that I get. Then I will open the floor up for the questions. And along the way somewhere I'm going to do a shameless self-promotion. So, the first thing is why listen to me? I have a lot of experience. I've been growing tomatoes for over 25 years. I've done extensive research, and I've had a lot of success. Now, it's one thing to say I've had a lot of success, but it's another thing to prove it. And I think these couple of pictures will probably get the point across of what I'm trying to say here. Okay, can everybody see that? The ladder picture. Very impressive, but you've got to get the ladder out to climb up and pick the tomatoes. So that is a negative. But yeah, these are some well-grown tomato plants right here. Put that away. And if you're going to grow big old honking tomato plants, have some big old tomatoes. Now, usually I have ones that are 2 pounds or more for the TomatoFest. This one only came in at 1 pound 10 ounces. And I went out and looked, and I do indeed have a couple that are bigger, but they're not right yet. So it's like, I mean, hello, tomato plants, don't you know, I have a talk today, I wanted to take a 2-pounder, come on, and they just wouldn't cooperate. And another thing about this one, I'll go ahead and show it. You see how this yellow heart's on top? That's called sun skull. And what that is just simply the tomatoes are exposed to the sun, it gets hot, and like everyone else this year, with all the rain we had early to mid-season, I'm fighting fungal diseases, which kind of, because of the dying leaves and stuff, some of the tomatoes get exposed when you have this. It's still good, the rest of it's still good. You can even save seeds from one that's, had sun skull. Now, there are going to be a couple of common themes that you're going to hear today. The first one is for gardening in general, and that includes growing tomatoes. My only hard and fast rule is I have no hard and fast rule. Okay? So I go by what I see, how I feel, assess the situation, and I might do one thing one day and something else another day. The other thing that you're going to hear throughout this talk is each gardener must find their own way. And I'm going to give you an example of that. That's support them. You can let them sprawl, you can cage them, you can stake them, you can do a Florida weave or a modified Florida weave, or you can do a trellis. Personally, I cage, but each one of you has to decide from the pluses and minuses and your environment, your situation, which one of those that you want to do. Okay, like a lot of you, I started by going down to the local nursery, getting some plants, throwing them in the ground while I tilled it, treated it, and I'll cover that more later. And put the plants in the ground. I had cages. I thought that with me working so much that would be a good, easy support system, and it was. And I started off with 4 tomatoes. This was back in the 80s. kind of revealing my age here a little bit. But I was a young whippersnapper at the time, I'm telling you. So I put these in the ground. I had never grown a tomato plant before. And unlike this picture, they didn't quite get to this big for these pictures.
Excuse me.
But still, like, these things were like 8 feet tall. I mean, just loaded with tomatoes. And I said to myself, that went pretty well. I think I want to try to grow some seed next year. Let's see how that goes. What's the worst thing that can happen? I fail, and I can still go down to the nursery and get transplants and go on about my business. So I wasn't sure that I was going to have success. So I said, well, what is the cheapest way for me to be able to do this? Well, I had some shop lights. I already had a timer. And the first thing I did was I noticed that on old, the old 64-ounce 1 liter soda bottles, and I drink Dr. Pepper, that they had this little black, I don't know if you guys can even remember this. Those old soda pop drinks had this little plastic thing in the drink, the container sits down this. That's just glued on. And I pulled the thing off. It's already got little holes in the bottom. Put some potting soil in there, threw some seeds in it. And what I did was I used like old pieces of 2x4 and some books to adjust, the height of the lights, because you want to keep them just a couple inches away. Fluorescent lights, they're not going to burn the plants. So you just want to keep them a few inches away. Sure enough, they germinated. Next thing you know, they got their first set of true leaves. So again, trying to stay on the cheap. You guys have probably seen these things. A lot of times people put beer in them. It's just a 16-ounce plastic container. Again, I just put holes in the bottom of it with a drill. Put holes in the bottom of it. And you can see where I've written variety names on it, so I knew what it was. They grew up just fine. I wasn't very well versed in the hardening off process, and I'll go into these things. So yeah, I got a little wind burn, a little sunburn on the leaves, but they still grew fine. Put them in the ground, darn it. If they didn't grow even +2 feet tall, and I was loaded with tomatoes. So that went really well for me. Now, that's how you can start to see what kind of success you might have. Now, I have a pretty elaborate setup. I have the heat ramps. I've gone from just plain shop lights to T5 lighting, and it is a type of fluorescent. Whatever one you use, whether it's plain old T12, the T8s, the T5s, you want to go with a high K rating. It's a Kelvin rating, and it's packaged. Okay, and you want to go 5,000 to 6,500 K rating on the kind of lights you use. A lot of those other grow lights, they're for like flowering plants and stuff like that. You don't really want your tomato seeds to flowers. So I recommend 5,000 to 6,500. All of mine around 6,500 K. Okay. You might be asking yourself, well, man, that sounds like a lot of trouble. Put them in, transplant them into the larger container. All that's a lot of trouble. So you're saying, why would I want to grow from seed? And the very first reason is variety selection. Okay? When you go down to the local box store or the nursery, you have to get what they got. Now over there we got a tomato tasting going on. And I can tell you that the most tomatoes that's won the most are Omar's, Lebanese, and Garrett. Paul has also done well. When you go down to your local nursery and to your box store, they're not going to have that, but they will have the Brandywine's, Cherokee Purple. The more common heirlooms, they will have that. So variety selection. If you do choose to go the heirloom route, once you buy the seeds once, and you learn how to save seeds, you don't have to buy it every year. But see, you can save the seeds and come back true to type, and with hybrids that doesn't happen. So I've thrown out a couple of terms here. Hybrid, three actually. Hybrid, open-pollinated, and heirloom. So I'm going to describe what the difference is. Open-pollinated, heirlooms come back true to type when grown from saved seeds. Hybrids don't. All heirlooms are open-pollinated. An heirloom is simply an old cultivar that's been around for a while. Now, you know how things go these days, like the micromanage. Some people say 50 years, some people say this many years, that many years. And our friends Craig LaHoyer and Carolyn Mayo have broken it down into 4 categories. You can look that up if you're interested to see what those categories are. And basically, there's no governing body saying this is what an heirloom is. So you kind of like to make up your own mind on that. So now I'm going to discuss in detail seed starting. Now, again, you can do something like this and plant a lot of seeds in there. You'll have to get the reading glasses out for some of this. Or what I use these days is little 4-packs. You've probably seen them in the nursery. And in these little 4-packs, I put anywhere between 15 and 30 seeds for those little cells. You can see I've got a little label that marks the names. And if you're just growing a few seeds, you can just wet, put the potting soil in. I use Bromix BX. Put the potting soil in, get like a pencil, make a little hole, drop the seed in. Well, for someone like me, I've grown 400 or 500 seedlings. You don't have time for that. So what I do is wet it down. I put 15 to 30 seeds per cell on top of it. And then I'll just take some potting soil like that and just sprinkle around the top just enough to cover it. Just want to make sure it stays covered. Then I take my little spritzing device and I spritz it to make sure it stays nice and moist throughout the process of growing seedlings. Moist, not wet. Tomato plants do not like wet feet. The roots do not grow and develop properly, and I'm a big one on proper root development. So, you wait till the seedlings, and what I'm going to do is one of these. I'm going to transplant one of these. I'm going to save the other one. What you want to do is you want to just make sure that they have their first true set of leaves. The very first leaves that come out are called cotyledons. The purpose of those cotyledons is to supply energy to the plant until the true leaves take over and the root system develops. Okay? And then you'll notice a lot of times they fall off. They turn yellow and fall off. The plant's done. So without further ado, I'll show you how I transplant seedlings. Get out some of these. I just put it down in the soil like that. Fill it up to the top. Shorty doesn't want to fill it up. Quit messing with me. Okay, then, here, I'll just scoot this out of the way a little bit. And then squeeze, push up, grab like that, pull that thing out. Okay, once I got it all, man, I'm going to get through all of this. Take the ball, I got it. Then I just separate them. We can shake it out. Okay, then I separate them. Throughout the process, the thing you want to look for, best stems. Not the biggest plant, best stems. The biggest amount of stems is going to give you the best plant. Okay, so this guy looks pretty good right here. That guy looks pretty good. This guy looks pretty good. Okay, so then I just take my finger and go bam, bam, bam. 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 And once I got it like that, 1, 2, 3, 4, label. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm not pressing it real hard. Just down firmly so it's nice and firm. Put the label on. What are those? And I guarantee you this will burn itself very nicely. Now I do, if I have the labels written up already, I transplant a flat, that's 18 plants, watered and under the lights in 12 minutes. I don't know, did you get to that, or would you like for me to slow it down? You got it? Okay, good. And I'm going to set this here, so if you want to, you can come up and look at the true set leaf. And the one that I have up here just happens to be a potato leaf variety. And that would be like your brandywine over there, they call pink. I don't know why they suddenly started calling pink brandywine. But brandywine is a pink tomato. Okay, it's an unpollinated area. And it's potato leaf. So now they had a lot of red brandywine, which is no relation, yellow brandywine. Maybe that's why they started doing the pink thing, but it's unnecessary. Just brandywine means to an experienced heirloom person like myself, Angie, they know that when you just say brandywine, it means the pink brandywine, and most of the times it's a subtle straight. Okay, now once you have that, I'll put mine. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, what do you look for in the stem? You said the stem is very important.
Thick.
Okay.
The thick, well-developed stem is going to be your best choice. Okay, now I said that I had, the bird length, and I do, and I need 8 hours of sleep at night. So do my tomato plants. So I have my lights come on at 2 o'clock in the morning. They go off at 10 o'clock at night. The other thing I have hooked up on that same situation is a box fan. Okay, again, a box fan blowing on them, low speed, blowing on them, does two things. It really helps with the stem development and, excuse me, it simulates nature. Now, of course, there are times when the front moves over at night and it gets windy. But generally speaking, you'll have some breeze in the daytime and stuff. Nighttime, it calms down. You don't have as much breeze. Blah, blah, blah. So that's why I have the band go off at night and have the whole shoot match go on the next morning. Okay, now, I start my seeds about 6 or 7 weeks before plant out date, which around here is May 15th. If you wait until May 15th, you never have a frost problem. Okay, some people like to rush it, and they've also gotten frost-fed plants. Well, when I grow some plants out, like this year I have 78. So, when you have 100 pepper plants, when you have that many frost tender plants out there, you don't want to, trying to cover them to protect them from the frost is a nightmare. You just don't want to go there. And besides, May 15th is the optimal time for maximum fruit set, and that kind of thing. So, about 10 days before you're going to transplant out into the garden, you have to herd these things off. Okay, because they're tender from having grown inside. And my schedule is I go 20 minutes the first day. In other words, take them outside. 20 minutes, bring them back in. Next day, 40 minutes. Next day, an hour. Next day, an hour and a half. Next day, 2 hours and a half. Next day, 4, 6, 8, out all the time. And that's what I do. And if you rush it, you can get windburn or sunburn on the leaves. And like I say, if it's a good, healthy plant, it's going to grow out. That's another one of my famous words. It'll grow out of it.
Randy?
Yo.
Relative to the harding off, how do you treat the sun relative to that? I mean, do you put them out in full sun or early morning or what's your time frame now?
Yeah, okay, the question was what time of day, what time frame, full sun, that kind of thing. The first day, you know, if you can get you know, sun and, you know, some coverage during that time, that's a good choice. Generally, I do mine in the morning, okay? And this year and several years, you know, I'm experienced. You know, I just take them out and throw them in the full sun if the sun's shining that day. If it's not shining, well, that happens too. But yeah, you know, do be careful and cautious of getting something. I mean, you don't want to intentionally get it, but that's what I do. Now, probably some of you have already heard. Well, if you haven't, I'm going to talk to you about site selection. And I like to do that because I give you information. Plus, it's just the end of there, and I love those things. So, what you want to do is pick the sunniest location you can. 6 to 8 hours minimum, and if you get down towards 6, I mean that's bare minimum. Anything less than that, you're going to have problems with like plants, lack of fruit set, blah, blah, blah. 8 minimum, I can get about 10, and that's what I recommend. And of course, the old antidote is, young guy, had grown tomatoes, loved tomatoes, wanted to grow them. So he asked around a little bit. Said, well, go down and talk to Farmer Brown, and that's the best tomato grower around. He'll tell you all about it. So you go, guy goes down, and, you know, this very subject came up. You know, how much sun should he get? The old farmer said, had a big old patch, you know, about 50 years old. A bunch of plants, they were just growing like in that picture. And so the old farmer said, well, you want to get them as much sun as you can. Well, how much? Well, you see that tree over there, that old, big old tree over there? The young guy looks around. That one that's about 50 yards away, if that's what you're talking about, yeah, I see it. The old farmer said, that's too close. So, as much sun as you can give them. Soil preparation. Now, I said that some other themes are going to come up in the book. Okay, and this one, I'm going to say probably a couple of few times. And it's on the little handout paper up here that I got covered up by accident. Treat your dirt right, and your dirt will treat you right. Okay, that's what you're growing in. I have my soil tested, and I looked at the results of the testing, and I'm amended accordingly. Now, I can tell you, I didn't bring any of my results with me, but I can tell you that I have high to very high readings on everything. Okay, your macronutrients, which is NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and your micronutrients, calcium, magnesium, that kind of stuff. And then you get into really micro stuff like zinc and stuff, but you know they don't provide that information in the soil test. It's just, and in fact, nitrogen is like a little bit of a different section. So it just goes with the phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Those would be your numbers. And you want, for me, I got high to very high, and you see my results. So, even if you don't have your soil tested, add them in. I use composted horse manure. You can use cow manure. I also use compost from my compost bin. My compost bin is 16 feet by 8 feet, and I use it all. And you know, your county extension office, that's, you can look online, but that's, and they'll direct you to where you want to go to get the information. but they'll give you direction and form. Basically, fill out a form. I did mine on November 1st of last year. So I just looked at my soil test results before I came over to do this talk, and I did mine on November 1st. So after the growing season, you go out, dig a hole. I use my post hole digger. Dig a hole, go down about 5 or 6 inches where the roots are going to be, and do that in several areas in the garden. Get it together, mix it all up, and you want about a half a pound per sample. Put it in a little Ziploc bag, and then they'll supply the address to mail it in. And you know, in the old days, they would take it and mail it for you or send it over for you. These days, you got to pay for mailing. And I did mine, and my buddies, and I had 6. You know, so that would have made about 6 or 7 plots, you know, samples, and it cost me $7 to mail it off, and that was for both me and my friends. Okay, the next thing is, and this doesn't apply to any of you guys that's in a raised bed or doing lasagna or anything like that. Probably Melanie will talk about lasagna later on, and it's not the Italian food that I'm talking about. But that'll be covered later on. You can ask me or whatever if it isn't. Okay, so this applies to the plowing disc and the tillers. And I'm a tiller, and I think most people till. Okay, about a month before you're going to transplant out, about a month, and that makes it April 15th, around tax day. You know, whenever it looks like it's going to be dry enough, because you never, ever want to work wet soil. That's bad. And it'll mess you up for years. You deep till. And I mean, go down as far as your tiller will go. Then about 2 weeks before you're going to transplant, that's when you go out and you set your tiller for a fairly shallow setting, and that's where you cultivate in the manure or compost or whatever you're going to mix with. Okay, so I've already talked about how I did this. Now, after about, you know, coming up on transplant day, and again, it's May 15th, but the plants should be in the 8th. I'm sorry. Did you have one? I'm sorry. Your plants, your transplant size should be about 8 to 12 inches. That's how tall your plants should be. If they do get tall, you have to trench. And I'll just mention that term. I won't go into the details. I've had to do it before when it was too wet to plant. But you can look up the trenching method online, other lines, and other ways to handle a leggy plant. But let's say that doesn't happen. Everything goes well. And you're ready to transplant, you got them all hardened off, you're ready to go. Plant them deeply. So when I have a transplant, the first few sets of leaves are getting pinched off. I keep one fingernail, you kind of sharp the bite. And I pinch them off, and I plant that thing deep. You do not have to put anything in the hole, or you can. I do. I put a little bit of the compost divorce manure, a little bit of my compost. You know, I have one of those little hand trowel thingies, and just put a little bit of that in the hole. And it doesn't make any difference what you use to dig the hole. I use post hole digger. Again, I transplanted mine and some for a friend. And so, you know, that weekend I wanted to transplant 90 plants. And that's the fastest way for me to transplant 90 plants in a weekend. Okay, I can't spend a lot of time. So that's what works for me. I don't care how you dig the deep hole, just dig the deep hole. And I put the water in. I water the hole. Then I put the plant in. Then I replace the dirt that I took out of the hole. Then I give it a good water, man. I mean, I water it good. And I don't know if you guys remember, around May 15th of this year, it was hot and sunny, and I mean, it was pretty warm for May 15th around here. And I transplanted it. I never had any well. Okay, and that's one of the questions that comes up a lot. Well, what time of day do I do my transplanting? Sorry, I'm a drinker. When I talk, I mean, people see me do this every year. I do this every year. I apologize every year, but it is what it is. Okay, so when I get that question, what time of day, my response, well, it's a little snarky, maybe not. If you have to ask the question, you should probably transplant in the evening. Then, when you get a little experience, you can transplant in the morning. Then when you get a little bit more experience and know-how, like the little me, you can transplant anytime you darn well feel like it. And that's what I did this past weekend, and this past May, and that's how I got 90 plants transplanted one weekend. And I started in the morning, and I went all day, direct sun, and I never had a plant wilt. So, now, when I transplant, as soon as I get through the transplant process, I go back to paper. Take them right there. Excuse me. Okay, now we're going to move into actual growing. And first topic, related growing. I mulch. Here's another one of my sayings. Control your weeds, or your weeds will control you. Okay? They take away vital nutrients from your plant. They harbor disease, like foliage diseases, which a lot of us might be fighting this year. And harbor insects that can do bad things to your plant. So I go ahead and mulch. And again, remember how I was talking early on, you got to find your own way and stuff like that. I have used hardwood mulch, grass clippings, untreated of course. Now that weed and feed stuff, that'll knock the tomato plant dead in half a heartbeat. Do that. Ground up oak leaf and straw. I've used all those. I migrate towards hardwood mulch. But like I say, each person's got a find to find what works for you. Supply newspaper. I come back and I'll water it with my water hose that's got one of them adjustable nozzle thingies on it. And then I put the mulch on. Then remember how I was saying, well, I heard the past was I have no hard to. If the mulch is nice and moist, well, I'm good to go. If it's dry that evening, I go back and wet down the mulch. Okay. So fertilizer. I use an organic product for the supply. Fertilizer plant side dress. I didn't do it this year. I also use an organic foliar feeder spray micronutrient kind of thing. I suspended that at one point this year because I decided that the only thing I was going to get my tomato plants wet with was fungicide. So again, up to you. You can use it, you don't have to, it's up to you. Now, pesticides. For things like flies, aphids, stuff like that, I use the leftover dishwasher. Like you do your dishes and there's leftover dishwasher. I put that in either my handy dandy sprayer for a little application, or I put it in my 2 gallon. I usually have, it's not as big enough a problem. I catch it early enough. I probably only put about a gallon of it in there. But yeah, and for me, I wash my tomatoes off before I eat them. So, I mean, that's not a bad thing to use for that kind of stuff. For some of the other issues that I have, I use diatomic, and that also is organic. And then for things like cornworms and tomato worms and stuff like that, I hand pick them. Stink bugs, I got a handheld vac, and I vacuum them into that, and then I dump them into the circular. Well, it's real quick. But anyhow, when you see those hornworms, a lot of people say, oh, that's tomato hornworm. In all my years of experience, I've only seen 2 tomato hornworms. All the rest of them, I probably have 5 or so, were tobacco hornworms. Okay, and the way you tell the difference is the tobacco hornworm, he's the light green in color. He has a red horn, and his little stripes don't make like little chevrons. Okay, and just the opposite for the real tomato hornworm. It's going to be a darker green, black horn, and he's going to have the chevron stripes that click instead of just this diagonal mark. And again, the internet's a great place. All you got to do, tobacco hornworm, tobacco versus tomato hornworm, and you should get something that's very similar to what I said. Now, I've talked about organic. I choose to go organic. Again, this is a personal decision. You can or you don't have to. Your choice. The most important thing for me is that people have success. When you have success that approaches or matches my success, you're having fun and you keep growing. So that's what the most important thing is for me. A lot of those organic people, man, they get up on their soapbox and it's just a turn on. So that's why I say that that's what's most important. Have success. And then if you want to go organic, which is the natural tendency, not natural, but it's the general tendency these days, is to go more organic. So, for instance, on the fungicide, I use Serenade. Okay, you can see the little OMRI right there in the bottom. And then I also use copper fungicide, and I'll rotate. 1 week I do one, the other week I'll do another one, or I'll do it early again. Depends on the case. Early in the season, I'll use May. Late in the season, I migrate more towards copper. You have to do what's best for you. This year I also tried to use aspirin. Aspirin has salicylic acid in it, or acetylsalicylic acid. It goes by both names. I don't know why some people shorten it. But anyhow, you can use that. One pill dissolved per gallon. And I did that this year. I tried it. You can go around in my garden and look at the plants, and you can tell which ones that got the acid. They are suffering. It may work for some people, but it sure didn't work for me. And once I realized what was going on, I migrated back to my good safety net product. The stuff that works for me in my garden. Maybe it'll work for you. I don't know. It didn't work for me. Okay, so now we talk about growing and things are going along fine. Got tomatoes coming out. Now it's time to harvest. Color and peel. So when they have a little squeeze going, go right. And having peel is especially good when you're growing the green one rice. Now I noticed that there was a couple green one rice over there. I forget which varieties it was. But generally they will blush on the bottom end a little bit. There will be some color blushing. Like I'm growing Cherokee Iron, it has a little bit of a red pinkish blush on the bottom end. It's great, but I still feel it just to make sure. And I think over there I saw Spears Tennessee Green. Now that one has like, isn't it about the same color as the yellow part of a green zebra? So to be this yellowish, amber, mustardy kind of color that it blushes to when it's bright. So each one of them has some different colors to blush to. And that'll help you, but always go by peel. You can pick any time after it blushes. 5 stages of ripening. Immature green, when they're a little green sucker. Mature green, start getting dark. Blushing. Start to see something happen on the blossom and the bottom end. We're starting to see a little color change there. That's blushing. Turning. The blushing is coming up through the tomato, right. Well, we know what right is. So anytime after blushing, you can pick them. I try to let mine stay on the vine as long as possible. But in one area of my garden, I got this cat bird that likes to peck them. So on that case, I keep the cat bird from getting them. The moment I see them start blushing, I go ahead and pick them. If you have a similar situation, just use that. Again, you got to find your own way, whether you flush and turn right when you pick them. You got to find that. You store them on the counter, not in direct sun. You store them in direct sun, they get mealy. You store them on the counter. And then when you store them on the counter, and I don't wash them until I get ready to use them, but when you're storing them on the counter, okay, there's this never-ending debate as to whether you have it stem up or stem down. Okay. Now with these big ones, well, this one isn't quite big enough. But this one, well, actually, it's a good size because I like to go a pound and a half bigger. Okay, because when you flip him, he tends to crush under his own weight. Okay, and he's still going to crush under his own weight a little bit with the blossom in, but I cut that part off anyhow. So now the latest data, and again, this can change about. See, I used to talk next to a traffic light. To the traffic light and say, you know, the common consensus by the experts is that it changes about as often as that traffic light over there. Now, I'm not making this up. It's changed many times over the years. So the most recent one is stem end up. So now, we're going to go into seed saving. Of course, you can actually just spread them out on a paper towel and do it that way. That's frowned upon with if you're going to trade seeds with people. And the other way is the way I use, which is the fermentation method. Okay. Now, if you're going to hang around, there is a demonstration and a full discussion about you doing it the fermentation method coming up later by Angela Faulkner. Angela Faulkner, one of the master gardeners, going to do that. I think it's 2:30. I forget the exact time, but later on today, she's going to do a full demo of what you see, and it's kind of an involved process. You cut the tomato, you take the thing, you wait for it to ferment, and so that's why it's being broken out into a separate discussion. Okay, you can pick anything as long as you pick it before the killing frost. As the season gets later and later, you're losing more and more sun. There's going to be a flavor change. And at the end of the season, I burn my plants. Do not compost them, especially this year. They have foliage disease. You compost it, now you got foliage disease spores in your compost that you're going to try to put on your tomato plants next year. That's not good. So I burn the plants. And now it's time for the commonly asked questions. The most common question I get is how often do you water? My answer may seem like the snarkiest answer in the world, but I assure you it isn't. I water my tomato plants when they need water, and not a second sooner. And so this is where you have to find your own way. You want to catch them, and you got to go in conditions. You want to catch them before they start running. Okay, and if you're having a hard time gauging it, go out in your garden, go to a nearby area where you can dig down a little bit, and try to dig down to where the roots is and see if it's moist down there or not. If you find that, because at the surface it's going to get dry when it gets hot. But if you go down 3, 4, 5, 6 inches, it's still moist. They don't need water yet. When you do water, water thoroughly. I mean, give them a lot of water. And then don't water them again until they need watering again. The next most common one is, what's this black, brown, sunken, dark, leathery area on the bottom of my tomato? That's blossom end rot. Any stress can cause it. The stress prevents the distribution of calcium, which is what causes the blossom end rot, not having the calcium. And there's calcium generally there and available to plant scientists discovered that study the tissues. It's just because of the stress the plant can't distribute it to the tomato. Not a lot you can do about it. They generally grow out of it. It's almost always weather related. Some varieties are more susceptible to it than others. What about using Epsom salts or microfoliar sprays? Again, I use the foliar spray. I've used Epsom salts. You know, again, this is something that you can do or you don't have to do. When you do the experiment, take a controlled plant or plant, take the non-controlled plant or plants of the same variety, and treat some, don't treat others. Watch what the results are. If you're pleased with the results, then you want to start using that thing. Last most common is, do you pinch suckers? Remember, all the way back in the beginning, I said, my hard and fast rule is I don't have hard and fast rules. That's the case here. With cherries, tomato plants, and your small fruited plants like early girl or something like that, I don't pinch suckers. Almost never. On the big old beef steaks, I pinch up to the first cluster sometimes. If I have other desires that I want to, goals that I want to achieve for something, I may or may not pinch. So, that's basically it. One thing I want to draw your attention to is I have a little sheet up here, and it goes over, and what it has is a reiteration of a lot of the things that I covered in my biggies, like treat your dirt right, control the weeds, you know, don't overwater. You know, people say, oh, I water my plants every day. Don't do that. When they're too wet, the roots don't develop right, and it prevents oxygen. Believe it or not, the roots of the tomato plant needs oxygen. You know, again, every gardener has to find their own way. When it comes to growing, observation, good skills in that area are a good thing to have. So get out there in the garden, look around, see how things are going. Plus, it's therapeutic. You know, you get sometimes I get out there and I'm wandering around the garden, and my problems is about a million miles away. I also have, here comes the shameless plug card. I also have some of my cards up here. I sell seeds, plants, produce, and salt. So take one of those cards, and basically that's it. Tomato growing is fun and easy. So get out there, good luck, and happy growing. And are there any questions? Yes.
You mentioned burning foliage. What about during the season of fruit that has stuff growing on it? You want to dispose of? Burn that?
Like I burn the whole plant.
But that's an animal.
Right.
All the stuff that actually has so I burn that also?
Yeah, he's looking for some clarity on what all to burn. And of course, I burned the whole plant. Now, you know, for the foliage diseases we had this year, when you save seeds, those foliage diseases, be it early blight, bacterial leaf spot, those kind of things, they're not soil-borne, so you don't have to do the bleach bath. If you have other more serious diseases, you do have to do the bleach bath to try to eradicate soil-borne diseases. any rotted fruit, again, I mean, you can discard, but that's what adds to the organic material that's on my compost pile. Does that answer your question?
But you throw that in the compost.
Yeah, the tomatoes and stuff like that, maybe they're rotted, maybe they're green at the end of the year. Yeah, just throw all that in the compost pile. And even with the blossom end rot, it's not a transferable disease, it's a physiological problem. In other words, it's because of the environment and what's happening to it. It's not like a disease with spores, like Septoria or Alternaria, which the Alternaria fungus is what causes early blight. So it's not like spores from it or anything like that. It's physiological. So yeah, blossom end rot, throw it on the compost pile. I do it all the time. Yeah, it's back there in the back. Perfect answer, perfect question. I want to reiterate that question, and thank you so much for bringing it up. I meant to mention it. I'm trying to scoot along quickly because I got a late start. But the question was, when you see those big fat worms, and she's talking about a hornworm, and it has this rice-looking stuff on the back of it, that's parasitic wasp. Okay, and what you want to do in that case, or what I do in that case, is I let it go. Because that's made a hornworm. You might not know it at the time, or tobacco hornworm, whichever one it is. But hornworm is the general term. You might not know it yet, but he did. They go along and they eat him from the inside out. So if you see the white, that's what I do. I don't pick it and stomp it. If there's no parasitic wasp, I pick it and stomp it. But yeah, very good question. If you see that, looks like little white. So if you see that, let it go. It's the end. Next question. I think you have.
Now, I was just concerned about the time of your burning versus your soil sample. It's not that whatever you're burning is not going to affect your
Right.
soil sample, or do you have time?
Right. Now this question regards the burning process and whether it affects soil sample taking or not. When I say I burn it, what I mean is I cut down the tomato plant, I take it out to my burn pile, okay, and I burn it out there. I don't burn it in place. So I take it to the burn pile, burn it there, and of course doing that, it has no effect with the question. Yeah. And that helps with clearing things up, so very good. Thank you. And I think you had a question? No? You did. Okay. Yeah. Good. And yeah. Okay. Now I've got two questions here, and I'm going to take the second one first, and the first one second. Okay. And what that question involved is some sort of mechanism when you're having an extreme amount of rain to cover the plants, the tomato plants. And the answer is absolutely yes. If you can do that, even if you put an umbrella over it, I don't care how you do it, but if you can find a way to do it, yes. In that case, when we had so much rain, which exasperates fungal diseases, if on every other rain you didn't need to cover the foliage so it didn't get wet, it would be a very good idea. Now the next question is, you have brandywine and brandywine OTB. And what does that mean? What is it? OTB stands for off the vine. Okay, and Off the Vine was a newsletter that was published by my good friends Craig LaHoyer and Carolyn Mayer. Okay, and that's where the OTB part comes off. And I'm pretty sure we have to look it up, I can Google it, but I'm pretty sure it was off-pipe sport that showed up in Craig's cart. And it came back through the pipe, and it was a good tomato. So Craig just went ahead and called it off the vine for that newsletter that they were publishing at the time. This was probably back in the late 80s, early 90s, something like that. And so that's what off the vine is. It's just the sport of branding on it. Craig's cart. Yeah, Gary is. Gary is. TomatoFest down in Carmel, California. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, very good. More questions, please. Anyone? Okay. Well, very good. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you.